So now we're going to have a fair deal. I think we're going to have a very successful meeting. Certainly there are a lot of people that are waiting for it. Maybe it won't happen.
President Trump expressed optimism about securing a fair trade deal with China. However, he warned that the highly anticipated one-to-one meeting Chinese President Xi Jinping at the APEC summit next week.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping have held talks on the sidelines of the APEC summit in South Korea.
The narrative so far since the trade deal between President Trump and the Chinese President Xi Jinping after last week's meeting has been positive.
This year's host, President Lee Jae-myung, opened the leaders' meeting with a clear message. In an era of fragmentation, connection remains the only path forward. He spoke of three priorities: rebuilding resilient supply chains, accelerating the green transition, and ensuring that digital transformation leaves no one behind. The official theme, building a sustainable tomorrow through connection, innovation, and prosperity, appeared on every banner and backdrop, but beneath the polished phrases lay urgent realities. Global trade had spent much of 2025 under strain. In February and again in August, the United States introduced sweeping new tariffs on imports from multiple trading partners, with the highest rates applied to China. Average duties on Chinese goods now ranged between 30% and 60% depending on the product category. Washington argued these measures were necessary to protect national security, rebalance trade flows, and encourage domestic manufacturing. Beijing responded with retaliatory tariffs and export controls on critical minerals. Companies across the Pacific scrambled to reroute shipments, stockpile components, and redraw supply chains that had taken decades to perfect. By the time delegates arrived in Gyeongju, markets were desperate for any sign of de-escalation. That sign came sooner than almost anyone expected. On the afternoon of October 30th, before the formal APEC program even began, Air Force One touched down in Busan. President Donald Trump stepped off the plane for his first face-to-face meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping since returning to the White House in January 2025. The venue chosen was a secure conference facility near Gimhae International Airport, far from the media circus in Gyeongju. Security was tight. Only a small pool of photographers captured the handshake. The talks lasted 110 minutes, longer than scheduled. When the two leaders finally emerged, they announced a framework agreement that immediately changed the temperature of global trade. The United States agreed to reduce selected tariffs, most notably cutting the rate from 20% to 10% on goods linked to fentanyl precursor chemicals. Washington extended tariff exclusions for hundreds of product categories for another full year and paused new restrictions in sensitive sectors such as semiconductors, maritime equipment, and advanced machinery. In return, China made several concrete commitments. Beijing pledged stricter export controls on chemicals used to manufacture fentanyl, with a focus on shipments heading to North America via Mexico and Canada. China agreed to resume unrestricted exports of rare earth elements and permanent magnets, materials essential for American electric vehicles, wind turbines, and defense systems. Beijing also suspended or terminated retaliatory investigations into major U.S. companies operating inside China and promised to dramatically increase purchases of American agricultural products, especially soybeans, corn, pork, chicken, and liquefied natural gas. Both sides extended the truce for 12 months and committed to a series of follow-up negotiations starting in early 2026. President Trump described the outcome as one of the biggest deals ever made for American farmers and workers. President Xi Jinping issued a written statement emphasizing mutual respect and win-win cooperation. Stock markets around the world surged the next morning. Soybean futures in Chicago jumped 7% in a single session. Shares in semiconductor and clean energy companies rallied sharply. While the truce did not resolve deeper structural issues, intellectual property protection, forced technology transfer, market access for services, and currency practices, it prevented a spiral that the International Monetary Fund had warned could shave up to 2 percentage points off global growth in 2026. Inside the main APEC venue in Gyeongju, dozens of other meetings unfolded. One of the most closely watched involved Japan's brand new Prime Minister, Sanai Takaichi, who had been in office for exactly 10 days. On October 31st, she sat down with President Xi Jinping for their first bilateral discussion. Japanese officials described the atmosphere as frank but constructive. The two leaders agreed to resume high-level economic dialogue that had been suspended for several years. They committed to expand cooperation in third-country infrastructure projects, green technology, and disaster prevention. Both sides reaffirmed earlier agreements on maritime crisis management and pledged to accelerate people-to-people exchanges, including tourism and student programs. Importantly, Prime Minister Takaichi and President Xi instructed their teams to explore practical ways to reduce tensions in the East China Sea through advanced notification of military activities and improved communication hotlines. While no dramatic breakthroughs were announced, diplomats on both sides called the meeting the most substantive in years. Just 24 hours earlier, Prime Minister Takaichi had welcomed President Trump to Tokyo, where the two leaders reaffirmed the centrality of the U.S.-Japan alliance. They announced new agreements on joint production of critical minerals, co-investment in next-generation semiconductors, and expanded energy cooperation. Japan secured adjustments to certain U.S. tariffs in exchange for commitments to increase purchases of American liquefied natural gas and open its market further to U.S. agricultural products. These back-to-back summits illustrated Tokyo's core strategy: deepen security ties with Washington while maintaining stable, pragmatic economic relations with Beijing. South Korea played its traditional role as honest broker. President Lee Jae-myung held separate meetings with both President Trump and President Xi, then brought the three countries together for a brief trilateral exchange on the sidelines. Seoul has long argued that stability on the Korean peninsula benefits everyone. Discussions touched on the need for renewed dialogue with North Korea and stronger coordination on missile defense. Other APEC members advanced their own agendas. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese pushed for binding commitments on fossil fuel subsidy reform. New Zealand's leader emphasized Indigenous economic empowerment. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney highlighted critical mineral security and supply chain mapping. Singapore Prime Minister Lawrence Wong called for faster progress on digital economy rules. Chile and Peru focused on lithium and copper partnerships essential for the global energy transition. Trade statistics released in the days surrounding the summit painted a vivid picture of the challenges everyone faced. China's October export figures showed an overall contraction of 1% year-on-year, the first decline in 7 months. Shipments to the United States plummeted more than 25% compared to October 2024, reflecting both tariff impacts and the front-loading of orders earlier in the year when companies rushed goods across the Pacific before new duties took effect. At the same time, Chinese exports to ASEAN countries grew by double digits, and trade with the European Union remained strong. Beijing's diversification strategy was clearly working, but the American market still accounted for roughly 15% of total Chinese exports, a share no other partner could replace overnight. Imports into China grew only marginally, signaling persistent weakness in domestic consumption. Property sector troubles, local government debt, and cautious household spending continue to act as brakes on the world's second-largest economy. Analysts noted that the U.S. China truce would provide welcome breathing space, but Beijing would need to combine external openings with stronger domestic stimulus to meet its growth target of around 5% for 2026. In the United States, October trade data revealed a widening deficit driven by strong consumer demand and a robust dollar. American farmers had suffered significant losses earlier in the year from Chinese retaliatory measures. The new purchase commitments announced in Busan were expected to inject billions of dollars into rural economies across the Midwest. Soybean growers in Iowa and Illinois, many of whom had supported President Trump's return, celebrated the deal as a lifeline. Japan's economic indicators told a story of resilience amid currency weakness. The yen hovered near 35-year lows against the dollar, boosting export competitiveness for companies like Toyota, Sony, and Panasonic, but raising the cost of imported energy and food. Industrial production edged higher, led by machinery and semiconductor equipment. Prime Minister Takaichi wasted no time outlining her domestic agenda. Wage increases of at least 5% in 2026, expanded childcare support, and massive investment in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and space technology. Beyond economics, security concerns cast a long shadow. The Indo-Pacific faces multiple flashpoints: Chinese claims in the South China Sea, tensions across the Taiwan Strait, North Korea's advancing missile and nuclear programs, and periodic incursions near the Senkaku Islands. APEC is strictly an economic forum and does not discuss military matters, but many leaders used bilateral channels to address these issues. The United States, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and others reaffirmed their commitment to freedom of navigation and a rules-based international order. China emphasized peaceful resolution of disputes and development-first cooperation. One concrete outcome came from the trilateral meeting between the United States, Japan, and South Korea. The three countries announced an expanded schedule of joint military exercises for 2026, deeper integration of missile warning systems, and new economic security initiatives to reduce dependence on single-source supply chains for semiconductors and critical minerals. This mechanism, revived at Camp David in 2023, has become a cornerstone of regional stability. Looking further ahead, 2026 promises to be another pivotal year. Japan will chair the Group of Seven, giving Prime Minister Takaichi a global stage to promote her vision of pragmatic, interest-based diplomacy. South Korea continues diplomatic efforts to restart talks with North Korea. The United States and China have scheduled at least 4 high-level economic dialogues before next summer. Peru will host APEC 2026 with a focus on inclusive growth and ocean sustainability. The Group of 20 summit in South Africa will tackle debt relief, climate finance, and reform of multilateral institutions. The broader global economy faces a complicated outlook. The International Monetary Fund forecasts world growth around 3.1% for both 2025 and 2026, below the pre-pandemic average. Inflation has moderated in advanced economies, but food and energy prices remain volatile. Central banks walk a tightrope between supporting growth and preventing wage price spirals. Climate change adds another layer of uncertainty, with extreme weather events disrupting agriculture and logistics. Supply chains are undergoing their most profound transformation in decades. Companies are moving from just-in-time to just-in-case inventory models. Production is shifting from global efficiency to regional resilience. Terms like nearshoring, friendshoring, and de-risking have entered everyday business vocabulary. Mexico has emerged as a major beneficiary, with foreign direct investment hitting record levels. Vietnam, India, and Indonesia have seen manufacturing booms. Even Europe is attracting new factories as companies seek alternatives to lengthy trans-Pacific routes. For ordinary people across the region, these grand developments translate into tangible effects. American consumers may notice modest price declines on electronics and clothing as some tariff pressures ease. Chinese factory workers in Guangdong and Zhejiang hope for steadier orders and fewer sudden layoffs. Japanese households anticipate government measures to offset rising living costs. South Korean students look forward to expanded exchange programs and easier visa rules. As the sun set over Gyeongju's ancient observatories, leaders departed with handshakes, joint statements, and private understandings. The 2025 APEC summit did not erase competition between the United States and China, nor did it resolve every territorial dispute or economic grievance. What it did achieve was far more modest yet profoundly important. It proved that even in an age of strategic rivalry, dialogue remains possible, compromises can be found, and mutual destruction is not inevitable. The agreements reached in Busan and Gyeongju bought the world time to negotiate deeper solutions, time to diversify risks, time to invest in the technologies and relationships that will shape the next century. Whether that time is used wisely will determine whether the Asia-Pacific becomes a zone of shared prosperity or a theater of escalating confrontation. 60% of global GDP originates in this region. More than half of humanity lives here. The choices made by leaders in conference halls and the decisions made by companies in boardrooms will echo far beyond these shores. The ancient kings of Silla understood that empires rise and fall on their ability to adapt. Today's leaders face the same test. This has been an in-depth 40-minute examination of one of the most consequential